Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Empowering Musicians podcast. If you're watching live or on replay, I'm glad to have you with us. Today, I am welcoming Martin Cowart, who is a spiritual mindset coach who helps gay, bi, and trans business leaders and change agents lead with the mind of their hearts to maximize happiness and opportunities to transform and save lives. Welcome, Martin.
Well, good to be here, Michael. It's such a joy to be a guest on your podcast or your live broadcast today. And I just love the topic of living a life of purpose, living a life of mission. And I can't wait to dive into this conversation with you today and share how living a life of mission and purpose has really grounded my life and given me a North Star to make a difference in the world as a change agent myself.
Beautiful. Well, I think my first question is going to be, how did you get to be a spiritual mindset coach? But before that, like, what does that even mean? What is a spiritual
coach? Yeah, there's all kinds of mindset coaches out there. Well, a spiritual mindset coach is we are spirit. And so we want to develop the mindset of the heart, because the heart lives, our spirit, we connect to spirit, we can connect to our divine presence through the heart. We have two minds. We have the mind in our head, which is an individual thinking mind, the ego thinking mind. But then we have a much broader connection to infinite intelligence, the mind of the heart, the intellect or the intelligence of the universe. So when we connect to that spiritual heart set, that spiritual mindset, and we lead with that heart-centered love, creative energy, that's how we make things happen. That's how we create. That's how we manifest. That's how we make dreams happen. And that's how we change the world. So if we're trying to get things accomplished by just simply what's stored in the memory banks, which is what we often try to do, of our mind, we can get very frustrated because the mind is not capable of creating.
Wow.
The mind is not, the human mind by itself, without the heart, is not capable of creating. It's great at remembering and it will learn, but it needs the heart to align with the universe to begin to live in alignment with your soul's purpose, with the mission, your mission that comes from divine purpose. And a lot of people don't even have a divine purpose or have a soul purpose or a mission. And so one of the things we do first in my coaching program is we teach people who you are spiritually. That's who we are. Without that life of spirit within us, without that life or that creative energy within us, we wouldn't be here. So sometimes we think we're this individual being, but really we're a being. We are a being connected to this enormous energy of the universe. And that energy is just the highest vibrating creative energy that there is. So when we begin to lead with that higher vibrational frequency of unconditional love, that creative condition, then we have the power to change the world.
Yeah, I think that's key. And I used to be really skeptical about this whole idea of like positive thinking and all this. And then I realized that I was negative thinking all the time, and that we're doing one or the other, right?
Yeah, I mean, even like, what you just said, I used to be so skeptical of positive thinking. That in itself is negative thinking. So one of the first things we try to do is we try to say, okay, how do we break our habit? We all have that habit, by the way. We all have a habit of thinking, because that's how the mind thinks. There's the ego thinking mind, which is always thinking in shadow. It's always thinking in negativity. And so there's the light of the heart that's always producing out creativity, positive vibrations. So it's really about Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the universe, you understand energy, frequency, and vibration, because everything is created out of energy, frequency, and vibration. So we have that negative vibration, which are the lower realms that do not include the spiritual, that they're just survival mechanisms, and those are tend to be based on fear, because we're trying to survive. The human is trying to survive, so it's constantly putting up danger signals, warnings: stay away from this, don't do that, it might get hurt, blah blah blah, because it doesn't understand the creative genius of the world. It only knows what it's learned from past experiences. So we but we need that, because we need to bounce something off something so we can continue to grow and expand our consciousness. So it's not like shadow's a bad thing, but we need shadow to bounce the light off of, so that we can let it go, we can learn, and we can expand ourselves into a higher realm of consciousness. Does that make any sense at all? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's really profound when you consider it. And what I find really fascinating is that this idea that you point to of Tesla's about vibration and frequency is also the foundation of music, right?
Exactly. I mean, that's why I love sound baths so much, because what the orchestra is doing is they're bringing up the vibrational frequency into those higher ranges to heal the heart, to open the heart, quiet the mind. I mean, just think about times when you've probably been performing in the orchestra, and I know when I've been sitting in the audience, I just get completely lost in the vibration of the music. I'm not thinking about anything. And that's why I just love the creative genius that you musicians bring to the world, because that's what heals the world: vibration, frequency. And when you do a performance somewhere, and you bring up people's vibration, and you help them align with the vibration of the world, that's why it's so powerful what you do.
Yeah, and I never had a practice of meditation in my younger years, but what I did was I would have this, like all musicians, I would be in a practice room or in my studio playing, and you would have the same experience of transcendence, right, where you lose sense of
that's exactly what it is. It's transcendence. You're transcending the mind to another realm of consciousness, to the realm of spiritual.
Yeah. Which is also
spiritual is the word that they used back in those days, because it was like spirit. They could see trees moving, they could see changes happening, but they didn't know what they were. Right. And today, with science and quantum physics, we know that that's all light energy vibrating at various frequencies, depending on if it's a dense matter, it's going to vibrate at a lower frequency, and if it's a human heart, it's going to vibrate at the highest frequency, because that's the frequency that actually takes the thought and manifested it into matter.
Yeah, and there's a lot of scholarship and writing about being present now and being in the moment.
Yeah,
and that's something that I think musicians are really in tune with, because when you're playing, you're listening to your sound, and when you're trying to perfect something, and you just get in that present. It's such a great place.
That's exactly what you're doing, and that's what. And Eckhart Tolle is a big, in his famous book, The Power of Now. He's always talking about, if you can get into the presence of now. That presence, by the way, is the quantum field. So people call it the field of potentiality, because it's you can't see it, you can't touch it, but it's vibrating. It's vibrating at this high frequency light, and that's what we're made out of. By the way, that's what we are. It's in us. It's who we are. And so when we get still long enough and meditate, play music, whatever you do, when you get down into that, when you're able to quiet the mind, clear the mind, so your mind's not thinking about things. It's not processing and labeling it. That's a tree. That's a thought. It's just going into a place of like, oh, there's a direct line between spirit and the body that's bypassing the judgments of the mind. And that's when we're the most creative. And probably when we perform the best. And that's why it's so important for musicians to practice, so that they don't have to think about the notes they're playing. I know you don't. I mean, I took piano lessons when I was a kid. I was terrible, because I always had to think of the notes I was playing. I never got to a place where I was like, could just play the notes, that I wasn't musically inclined. And I used to get so frustrated when I said, you got to practice. I don't understand this. It's just, I got to look at the note. I got to push it on the piano keyboard. I never got past that, ever.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the part that we spend hours and hours getting past so that we can get into that state where we're just purely communicating and connecting with music.
Right. Now, there was something I was I was a little gay boy. I loved to dance. I loved to turn on Dinah Ross and the Supremes and just get lost in the music. And I would dance and I would completely get lost in that stuff because it was easy for me. I could just get in the rhythm, I get the thing. And I still do. And I remember kind of maybe having a tough day. I might say, okay, I think I need to get up and do some just dancing right now and get into my body and get out of my head. And it's a great way for me sometimes to disconnect from the mind, clear the mind, and open the heart, just by doing something as fun as dancing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
So how did you get here? How did you become a spiritual mindset coach?
Well, it actually came through my own dark night of the soul. I was a wealth manager with a big firm in New York, and I was pretty successful with it. And but it all came tumbling. I had a big fancy office on Park Avenue and all this kind of stuff. And that all came tumbling down in 2017 when we elected Donald Trump as our president. Because as a gay man, and he represented to me all those bullies, all those boys who bullied me as a boy in South Georgia for not being a normal boy. And I had worked so hard all my life to fit in with the normal boys. And that's really what I did to achieve success at the firm. And when he became president, I went to a dark night of the soul, and I went from being a top producer to actually being on the edge of bankruptcy. And as a matter of fact, I had some of my attorney friends say, you might want to consider bankruptcy because it would relieve a lot of pain because you'd qualify because you're not making any money, you're not paying your bills. So I was having a pity party one day, and I was really feeling sorry for myself. I think they had repossessed my BMW and I had to go get it out of the detention center. That was shameful. And I was really feeling bad for myself. I was really having a bad day, and I called my spiritual teacher and therapist, Teresa, and she listened to me for a while. She said, well, I don't suggest that you declare bankruptcy. That might make you feel better, and it will solve the symptom, but it's going to feed the problem. And the problem is you got to surrender this belief about yourself of being not worthy of money. You got to surrender this whole nonsense about you got to achieve this, you got to do this, you got to be rich, you got to be this, you got to do all those things that are all fear-driven that drove you to the top. You got to let go of every bit of that. You got to completely surrender that to God. And that's where I really learned and understood the principle of surrendering. We're surrendering the ego's belief that it has to achieve something to be worthy. So I did what she told me. I'd done it before. I'd done it about 10 years before when I was recovering from alcohol. I had surrendered that to God, and that was pretty easy, but this was a tough one. I never wanted to let go of my control of my money, but I'd made such a damn mess of it. I thought, well, maybe it's about time. So I did. And I got to tell you something. This was my moment of enlightenment, I guess I would say, is that all of a sudden, when I finally let go, this presence we talk about, this sense of grace of the divine filled me up with so much joy and presence and power, inner power, that I just felt so relieved and so much joy. And I heard a voice, that still small voice from within me say, Martin, none of this stuff matters that you're so worried about. It doesn't matter if you get a big fancy office, if you're rich, all that stuff that it doesn't matter. The only thing you have to do, Martin, is show up with love and gratitude, and I will do the rest. And that I meant me, the big I, be still and know that I am God, I, the divine I, the I now call Joy the Wise Woman. And I call her Joy the Wise Woman because when all this came up inside of me, when this grace, it is grace. That is what grace is. God graces you with his love or her love. And when that came up in me, I just felt so much joy and so much at peace and so conflict free. And that's what living in heart space is about. There's no conflict. There's no superiority. There's nothing you have to prove or have to do. It's just living life in the light. Literally. It's literally living light. And I've been a shadow work coach for 20 years. And I find oh my God, this is what shadow work is. It's actually to remove the shadows as they come up so that we can begin life in the light. And that's what being a spiritual mindset coach is all about. Because I realized when all this happened that as much as people they always wanted financial freedom. And I don't care what kind of external plan. And I was a good financial planner. It didn't matter what kind of plan I designed for people. If they had a mindset of scarcity, it was never going to be enough. So what they really wanted when we talk about financial freedom is we want to be financially free from our emotional attachments to money. There's that wonderful passage in scripture about it's easier for the camel to pass through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. The rich man does not have to give up physically his possessions, but he has to give up his belief that he won't be happy without them. And that's very hard to do. And that is what I do for people. I teach people how to get through the friggin' eye of the needle. Because all it is letting go of every single attachment you have to everything in the material world. Easier to say than to do. It takes practice, and it takes somebody to guide you. Because someone has got to, you got to see those shadows, those beliefs that are not true, that are creating the fear of letting go of that belief. You see, so that's really what that is. It's really about. It's not. You don't have to. You can live in the kingdom of heaven, and you can live like, I believe, what was the guy's name right now? Who I can't think of his name. Who lived on that island? He was such a wonderful teacher. I can't believe it. He was so well known. Anyway, he lived in a lot of wonderful spiritual teachers have beautiful homes and lots of beautiful material things, but they're not attached to them.
Yeah.
So it's all about the mindset and our attachment to those things.
So
And so because the mind is the mind, the ego thinking mind, and the heart. So when we begin to lead from the heart helps us. So you don't need that. You got when you're in the heart space, you've got the keys to the kingdom. You can create all the money you want. You don't need to bring that with you because you can create it because you're the creator of the universe. Literally. That makes sense?
I was really, yeah, it totally does. And I was really struck by when I learned, like when I started really examining what a scarcity mindset was, realizing that it has nothing to do with how much or little you have. Like I know people who are really, really comfortable financially who live in a scarcity mindset. I know that don't.
They're the worst. I mean, they worry so much about. I mean, I used to work for people who had more money they could spend in 10 lifetimes. I mean, I worked a lot with women who were getting divorced from their deadbeat husbands who went out and left them for a younger version. But the good thing about these women, often they got half the marital assets. They got more money than they ever had in their lives, but it was never enough.
Right.
I mean, they had millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But it was not. They would worry about some crazy little nonsense trinket that they wanted to have. I'm like, listen, don't you understand? Let go of all these attachments to things in your previous marriage. You're better off today without him and his money. Now it's your money. You can do what you darn well want to with it.
Right.
But it's that attachment to it. It's an attachment that makes that we think that we think that if we don't have this thing, this money, these material things, we are unworthy. It's all, I don't care what it comes down to. If you're dealing with money issues, rich or poor, it all comes down to a worthiness issue. I'm not worthy of it. And to prove I'm worthy, I got to have more. And there's never there is never a more amount that's going to prove you worthy because it's not a construction that's based on any truth.
Right, right.
I don't care how much money you have, you're never going to prove you're worthy because you're worthy the moment you're born with no money whatsoever.
Right. Yeah, when I met you, I remember you said something that really struck me, and I thought, oh, that's really fascinating. And it was about like maybe instead of worrying about budgeting and all of these things, which are important, and know that you need to change your relationship to money. And I was like, wow. I had no idea.
Instead of spending all your energy on thinking about you can't have, and you got a budget and all that kind of stuff, you got to start thinking about, well, how do I create the money? And that's the thing I'm working on right now myself. I am working on, well, how do I manifest enough money in my bank account this week so that I am comfortable knowing that I can have the resources I need to live my mission. And that's really what I'm working on right now in my own journey of manifestation or creation or whatever you want to call that. And that's what manifestation is. How do you, as the universe wants to support us, it's got our back. And it's been amazing when I learned to say I'm getting what I needed. I have great breakthroughs all the time by just saying, okay, I need this to show up. And this week I'm saying, okay, I need this to show up. I need something to show up that says that I'm going to be making $100,000 a year, no matter what. So that I know in my heart, I've got the freedom to know that I can pay my base expenses, and I'm not very far from it, and also grow and build and live my life's mission. And I'm pretty confident that I will get that.
Yeah.
Because that's how it works. That's how creation, that's how manifestation. If I sat here and said, I want a nice Mercedes in my driveway because I want it for myself, the universe doesn't really give a crap what kind of car I drive, which people make that mistake. But the universe does have my back, and it does want to support me in living this mission, particularly the mission that I have going on right now in Africa. So that's something that's what we learn to do, and we begin to think with the spiritual mind. The rational mind says, oh, you can't, like when I went to Africa, it says, oh, you can't go to Africa. You don't have the money. And it's not blah, 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 blah. And I was like, Joy was saying, nope, you're going to Africa. I went to Africa. And it changed my life. But, and that's all about saying yes to the divine. That's thinking with that spiritual heart that says you got everything you need.
Yeah. And
you're going to get what you need. And I'm going to make sure you get what you need when you're ready to move your business forward. And I kept saying, I'm ready. I'm ready, God. I am ready, Joy, to move this business forward. I want to see some money in my checking again.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah. And you mentioned your mission statement. And so my first question is, what is a mission statement, and why would a musician need one?
Well, a mission statement comes from your soul. It comes from your heart. And the way I typically guide my clients through a process is we go back into a time in our life, in our innocence as little boys and little girls, before we had began to protect our hearts with fears and pain, all that kind of stuff. And like, what is it? And asking, what is it you need to do in the world to be happy, to be fulfilled? And when we get into that state, we're actually talking to the divine. We're talking to that part of us, that innocent part of ourselves before it got shadowed over. And so you find out, well, this is what I'm here for. So for me, my mission statement is to create a world of abundance and prosperity by showing up with love and gratitude. That's what God told me to do in that, Joy said to do in that day. If you want to create a world of abundance and prosperity, all you got to do, Martin, is show up with love and gratitude. And then for my business, I have a vision, and I say, well, and then how that gets done in my business is I do that in my business by teaching people how to move into heart space, how to begin to live from the heart, how to begin to think from the heart, how to begin to work from the heart. And when we do that, then we can create and we can manifest the future we want to manifest.
Yeah. And so I talked about this a little bit, but I'd like to hear your views. What is the difference between, say, a mission statement or purpose and a goal?
Well, that's a good question. A mission statement is a North Star. It is a compass. It is something that you live by daily. I mean, I get up in the morning and I'm like, okay, Joy, we're going to create a world of abundance and prosperity. I'm here. I'm full of love and gratitude. What miracles are we going to perform today? What are we going to create today? How can I be a servant? That's a mission statement. That's a soul purpose. I'm aligning myself. I am setting an intention to align my body and my mind and my soul to this mission. That's a mission statement. Now, I might have certain goals to accomplish, milestones, if you will, that I might set daily or weekly in order to achieve that mission. Because we have to have something we can hold on to as human beings. So it might say be something like, okay, my goal this week is to have 20 conversations with 20 new prospects for my business. Because in order for me to be able to grow my business, I need to have some conversations with people. So I might set for myself this week a goal of having 20 conversations with people, because that goal is a milestone to achieving that higher purpose in life.
Yeah, that's absolutely. And I had an experience where I had to really figure out what my purpose was, because for the longest time, my purpose was my goal.
Exactly, and that is, and I would imagine that, and this is why I think what you're doing out in the world to empower musicians to think beyond their instrument is that high performing athletes, a lot of people who have this one single gift that they just work on all their lives to perfect and to master. They've gotten so, their mind is so conditioned to this one thing, they can't think beyond it. And they think they are that.
Exactly.
So what you're doing out there is you're out there teaching them, no, there's more, there's a lot more to you than the mastery of the human of your instrument. That doesn't mean it's not good, but it's like but in that, what I would even talk about in the practice of learning to master your instrument, go back to the source of where you got that from, which is your heart, which is that deeper place within you is beyond thought. And then you can say, well, if I have the presence, the creative genius within me to play this, maybe I also have the creative genius within me to do other things. And maybe, like when I found like at the top of that ladder, maybe there's something you're not aware of yet that's actually your sole purpose may not be playing the instrument as a profession. Your sole purpose might be teaching other people how to play an instrument. It might be it's always going to be something to bring people into the light, whatever that is.
Yeah.
That's the difference. And playing your musician is done well and beautifully can bring people into the light. But there might be other ways, if you can do that, to bring people into the light of God, into the light of creation, by bringing them into that creation. I would be willing to bet you that you could teach your body, teach your mind, and teach your body to do something else.
Yeah, and I had a situation where I talked about this in my first episode, where I didn't think I was going to play again, and I realized at that moment that my purpose, which was to be this, right, to win a job in a major orchestra, that was actually external, and that was not who I was, right? I had to figure out, well, who am I? Because a mission to me is who we are, and a goal is what we want to do.
It's one. So you said, well, I have been on a mission to maybe as a musician, my mission is to be a master at this craft so that I can bring people into a higher frequency of love and generosity in the world through my playing. And that's perfectly fine. And so one of your goals might be, in order for me to do that more fully, I want to land a job with this orchestra here so that, one, I can get paid, and number two, I can actually bring this service, this craft, this mastery to the world. But that's not all there is. I mean, that's just one moment in time in what you're doing. And I would be willing to, that creative genius within us is, there's nothing we can't learn if that's our sole purpose. I mean, I doubt very seriously I'm going to learn, if I decide one day I'm going to become a football player at 67, that I'm going to be able to do that. I mean, that's not realistic. But I could become a spiritual mindset coach in my 60s, and that's a lot of fun, because that was something that I was in alignment. And the universe is not going to ask you to do something that you can't do. Right. It might ask you to do something you might feel like your mind tells you can't do, but it's not going to give you anything that you're not capable of achieving.
Absolutely. So you work mostly with gay men, and I just wondered why you decided to focus on that as your
well, I think we're both, as coaches, I think we're best off helping people solve the problems we solve for ourselves. And so for me, I'm the closest to gay men who are having a hard time feeling worthy about themselves, because the way we were conditioned as little boys, that because we were different or not normal, we were second class. We weren't as good as other people, and that's very wounding. So, so that's one reason. It's my own story. But the second reason is I'm a shadow work master coach that has worked only with men. So I have a very good understanding of the interior landscape of men, gay or straight. Uh, but I don't have a very good understanding of the interior landscape of women. And when I've tried to work with women, it often comes off as mansplaining and makes them angry. So I just don't do it because it's not in my wheelhouse. It's not where I'm good. I mean, I can certainly work with women in certain ways to help them see things, but I don't think doing shadow work, which is what my style and my process of coaching is all about. And what that means is I'm helping gay men love those parts of themselves that we don't like. That's what shadow work is helping us to love those shadows and those parts of ourselves that we all have that we don't like, so we can become more wholehearted and we can love others. And that's the whole key. That is the key to unlocking the gate, is self-love. That is what it's all about, moving everything out of your way. All those all those beliefs of not being good enough, whatever that is, it's always some form of not being good enough. That because the because the lie is telling you the truth, which is you have more than abundance. You have more than what you need. You have more resources to do everything you want to do. And the shadow is telling you exactly the opposite. And so we behave sometimes out of that shadow to protect ourselves. And we do things that we don't particularly like. We might manipulate. We might lie. We might cheat. We might not show up on time. We might not keep our commitments. It doesn't really matter. I mean, the best example of somebody who's a good dark shadow for us to cast our projections on was Donald Trump. He is a dark shadow. He in essence is a shadow prince, if you will, of shadow behavior. Now, it's somewhere in there he has got a spark, an ember of light, because he wouldn't be alive if he didn't have it. But my feeling about him is he has had that shadow, that heart so covered for so long, it's just a very small little ember. And this is what I believe we as me as a light worker, I am always trying to fan that flame with love. Mm-hmm. Because if we can fan a little bit of love on the hearts of these people who are so afraid, because they don't know anything else. All they know is money and power and manipulation and all the things they've used to try to get their way in the world, that they've lost touch with that part of them that can be empathetic and compassionate and loving and forgiving and all those things that come from leading from the heart.
Yeah. And one more question. What is the biggest breakthrough you've made with some of your clients that you want to share?
That's a good question. I think the biggest breakthrough I've ever made was really last year when I went to Nairobi and I met a young gay African man who was leading his people out of a refugee camp in Kenya. And I saved his life by going to see him and actually helping him see, connecting with him and helping him to see and learn to what a beautiful, brilliant heart he has. That's where he leads from. So by going to visit with him and having his heart open so widely, and him also opening mine, that's one thing I will tell you about being a coach is that, and even working with you, I work with you and my heart opens with yours. I'm on the same journey you're in. I just may have had a little bit more experience and more practice in looking at these things. But the reality is that I grow and expand with you. And so I know that the transformation that happened in Abba Henry when I saved his life last year, and when you save someone's life, it's a transformational experience for everybody. And because in that moment where I hired him, and that's what we did, I hired and gave him a job. That's all it was. He knew for the first time in 3 years that he'd been living in that camp that he was loved, he was valued, appreciated. He knew the truth about who he was. And he emerged as what we call him now the Christ the King, because that Christ and him, that we all have a Christ, by the way. Christ was not Jesus's last name. Christ means that spark of life within us that we see in each other. I think in the Buddhists they say namaste, which means I see the life in you.
Yeah.
In the Christian world, we say we see the Christ in you. You know, that life force in you, unconditional life force within you.
Yeah, that's really a profound and beautiful statement.
Yeah, it changed my life. I mean, it really, I am able to, I live in the light now about 98% of the time.
Yeah.
Because of that experience. And he does too.
Yeah.
And that's why we're business partners on this project, because we're in that light. We're pulling more people into that light, into the freedom that we're trying to, that they deserve in the world. So, you know, how do we manifest that freedom into the world in an actual place where they can live, to be free? Well, that's coming from that highly productive, creative genius of the heart that we've joined together. When you put those hearts together in a collective way, that's how you supercharge the power, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what I would say, and that was probably the biggest. And I had a real opportunity last year. I worked with another a CEO of a big investment firm, and he was going through an ordeal. He wrote a book called Going for Broke. And I was in on the end, is where he's standing. He's like, it's a typical old David and Goliath story where he stood up against the old Wall Street boys, and he won. He's got a book out now called Going for Broke, but it was just really exciting to be his coach, coaching him through that ordeal.
Yeah.
And so those are the two things that I would say have been the most exciting for me.
That's fascinating. So I know you have to run to another meeting, and I want to just thank everybody for tuning in. And how do we connect to you, and how do we learn more about what you're doing in Africa?
The easiest way to connect with me is on Facebook or LinkedIn with my name, Martin Cowart. Just come into my Facebook, or all of them. They're on Instagram. It's Martin Cowart Coaching, but Martin Cowart. Connect with me on any of the social media pages and platforms, and that's where you'll find me. And if you'll send me a direct message, ask me to be your friend, I'd be happy to respond to you and have a conversation.
Great. And for those of you listening, it's COWART, Martin Cowart. And thank you so much for being here, Martin.
Oh, thank you so much, Michael. It's been a pleasure. I love this. I love this topic. So it was like, oh wow, what a wonderful thing to do on a beautiful spring day in northern New Jersey on a Saturday afternoon.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to working with more of my colleagues on developing this personal mission statement, because I think it's so important.
Oh, I agree too, because I know that, yes. I'm so proud. I'm so grateful for what you're doing in the world in empowering musicians, because they bring a wonderful gift of their talents to the world. And they may have more talents that go, like you say, beyond their instrument, because they're powerful, creative beings, really, aren't they?
Yeah. And I think our identity as artists sort of showing up in the world and giving this great gift that we have isn't exclusive to what you're doing with an instrument, right? It's really about
right, exactly. It's really more about living from the heart and finding that divine purpose and that mission, and doing it with that divine intuition, that connection with your spirit. It comes through the heart.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Martin, and I'll look forward to seeing you again soon, and in our other work that we do, and hope you'll come back someday. And
I would love to. I thank you for letting me come on and be your guest today, Michael. It's been a joy.
Thanks again, and we'll see you all soon. Take care.